She didn't come back seeking forgiveness. She came back to destroy the man who once shattered her heart. Behind her calm smile hides years of pain, anger, and a carefully crafted plan for revenge. But as his desperate fight to win her back clashes with her thirst for vengeance, love and hate collide in a storm that can only end in heartbreak, and no one will leave unscarred. The ending will leave you breathless. The bus screeched to a halt at the small town station, its engine coughing like an old smoker taking its last breath. A hiss of brakes followed, then the squeak of the doors opening. Passengers spilled out one by one, clutching bags, stretching stiff legs, blinking against the late afternoon sun. Among them was a woman with long chestnut-brown hair pulled into a low ponytail. She wore a light trench coat that framed her tall, slender figure, and her hand tightened around the handle of a small black suitcase. Her name was Isabella Carter, and as her polished shoes touched the pavement, the town seemed to pause. She stood for a moment at the edge of the station, eyes scanning the familiar streets. The square stretched ahead, lined with small shops that hadn't changed much in almost a decade. The bakery still carried its chipped wooden sign with painted loaves of bread, the hardware store still had its bright red door, and the old fountain in the middle of town gurgled with the same uneven rhythm. The air smelled the same too, fresh rain mixed with gasoline from passing trucks and the faint sweetness of cut grass. A lump rose in Isabella's throat. Memories swarmed her in a rush, warm summer nights filled with laughter, stolen kisses under street lamps, whispered promises of forever. Then, just as quickly, the darker memory surfaced, the humiliation, the betrayal, the night she swore she would never forgive. Her lips pressed into a thin, cold line. "Don't soften now," she reminded herself. "You didn't come back for nostalgia. You came back for justice." A voice startled her out of her thoughts. "Isabella, is that really you?" She turned sharply. Mrs. Green, the station clerk, bustled toward her, her round face glowing with recognition. She clutched her cardigan tightly, her eyes wide as if she were seeing a ghost. "My goodness, child. I thought I'd never lay eyes on you again. How long has it been?" 10 years. "Almost," Isabella replied softly, summoning a polite smile. Mrs. Green's hands closed warmly around hers. "Oh, it's such a blessing to see you back here. We've all missed you something terrible." Isabella's smile stayed in place, though inside she felt only iron resolve. The town might have missed her, but there was one man who would never welcome her return. She didn't say that. Instead, she nodded. "It feels strange being back." She left the station and walked into the heart of town. Heads turned as she passed. People whispered, some waved, some called out her name with pleasant surprise. She responded kindly, as though she were a woman simply coming home after time away. But every step she took was measured, her mind locked on the purpose that had brought her here. This was no casual visit. This was a reckoning. By evening, Isabella had settled into a small guest house on the edge of town. The room was plain, with fading floral wallpaper and a bed that sagged in the middle, but it served her needs. She set her suitcase down and wandered to the window. From there, she could see the town square glowing with warm streetlights. Her eyes shifted across the rooftops until they landed on a sleek modern building that stood taller than the rest. A bold silver sign crowned it, Blake Enterprises. Her jaw clenched. That name was plastered everywhere now, on banners, on delivery trucks, on plaques for charity donations. Ethan Blake had turned himself into the town's legend. The golden boy. The savior. Her fingers curled into the curtain as she whispered into the empty room. "They don't know the truth. They don't know what you did." Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Claire, an old friend who had spotted her earlier. "Isabella, I can't believe you're really back. Everyone's talking about it. We should meet up tomorrow. You'll never guess who asked about you already." Isabella didn't even need to guess. "Let me take a wild guess," she typed back. "Ethan Blake." The silence that followed was all the confirmation she needed. She set the phone aside and leaned back in her chair. From across the town, the sign of Blake Enterprises gleamed like a challenge. "Don't worry, Ethan," she whispered. "You'll see me soon enough." This time, She wasn't the broken girl he once destroyed. The next morning, the town was alive with the hum of daily life. Isabella walked down Main Street, her cream blouse tucked neatly into dark jeans. She looked effortlessly graceful, approachable, even ordinary, but inside her mind was sharp and coiled like a spring. Her path led her past the bakery, and the familiar smell of fresh bread drew her inside. The little bell above the door chimed, and warmth wrapped around her. Behind the counter, Mrs. Turner, the baker's wife, nearly dropped the tray of rolls in her hands when she looked up. Isabella Carter. Oh, my stars! Mrs. Turner rushed around the counter, flour dusting her apron. Look at you, sweetheart. We thought you'd gone and forgotten all about us. Isabella accepted the hug with polite restraint. It's good to see you too, Mrs. Turner. The place hasn't changed a bit. Mrs. Turner clucked her tongue. Not much ever does in this town. But you've grown even more beautiful. And you'll never believe who was just in here last week, talking about the old days. Her eyes gleamed. Why, Ethan Blake himself. You remember Ethan, don't you? The name was a knife Isabella had expected but still felt deeply. She smoothed her expression, keeping her tone light. Yes, I remember Ethan. Mrs. Turner sighed dreamily. Still as handsome as ever, and doing so well for himself. Owns half the town now, but is generous, always donating, always helping out. I bet he'll be thrilled to see you back. Isabella gave a small laugh that didn't quite touch her eyes. We'll see. Later that afternoon, she strolled through the park, her heels crunching softly on the gravel path. The air was filled with the chatter of children and the flutter of pigeons taking flight. She thought she might slip through unnoticed, but then she heard it, laughter. A deep, rich laugh that froze her in place. She turned. Ethan Blake stood across the park, surrounded by a few local businessmen. Tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair neatly trimmed, his tie loosened in a gesture of easy charm. Time had only sharpened him. His presence seemed to command attention effortlessly. And then his eyes lifted, and met hers. The world stilled. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Ethan's expression flickered with disbelief, then softened into something raw, almost broken. He excused himself from the group, his steps quickening as he crossed the path toward her. Isabella, he breathed, his voice low, unsteady. It's you. She stood perfectly still, her face composed into a gentle smile that hid the storm raging within her. Hello, Ethan. He stopped just a few feet away, studying her as if she might vanish. You're back. After all these years. Yes, she replied evenly. He raked a hand through his hair, struggling to find words. I thought you'd never come back. Life has a way of surprising us, she said, her tone smooth but distant. For a moment, silence hung between them, filled with everything unspoken. His eyes traveled over her face, lingering with longing and regret. You look incredible. Better than I remember. Her smile stayed in place, though her chest ached at his words. Thank you. He swallowed, his voice lower now, almost pleading. There's so much I want to say. Could we, maybe talk? Over coffee, perhaps. She tilted her head slightly, letting the pause stretch just long enough for him to feel its weight. Then she answered, calm and controlled. Maybe. I'll think about it. And with that, she turned, her heels clicking against the path as she walked away, leaving him standing stunned in the middle of the park. Her heart pounded, her hands trembled slightly, but she refused to look back. He still wants me. He still regrets. Good. That's exactly what I need. Behind her, Ethan remained rooted in place, watching her retreat. His chest tightened as he whispered to himself, unheard by anyone else. God, Isabella, I never stopped loving you. Isabella Carter woke early the next morning to the soft hum of the ceiling fan above her and the faint smell of brewed coffee drifting up from the guesthouse kitchen. She lay still for a while, letting her eyes trace the fading floral pattern of the wallpaper. It was almost laughable, this quaint little room, this quiet little town. To the people here, she was just another familiar face returning home, a woman who had found the courage to revisit her past. Only she knew the truth. Today, the real work would begin. She dressed carefully, choosing a pale blue dress that was modest yet flattering, one that suggested warmth rather than distance. She wanted to look approachable, forgiving, as though she were the sort of woman who had let go of old wounds. Her reflection in the mirror gazed back at her, serene and calm, but her eyes held the fire of her secret. Perfect, she whispered to herself. By mid-morning, Isabella strolled through town, stopping at shops, chatting with familiar faces. Her smile was soft, her laugh light. She listened as people shared little stories, how they had missed her, how good it was to see her again. She thanked them all, carefully planting the image of a woman who had returned seeking peace, not trouble. Inside, her mind worked like clockwork gears. Every handshake, every smile, every shared memory, it was all a performance. The more the town embraced her, the easier it would be to strike when the time was right. By noon, she found herself outside the polished glass doors of Blake Enterprises. She hadn't planned to come here so soon, but something pulled her forward, a mixture of curiosity and defiance. She pushed the doors open, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor of the lobby. The receptionist glanced up, her expression instantly brightening. "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" Isabella leaned against the desk casually, her smile disarming. "Yes. Could you tell Mr. Blake that Isabella Carter stopped by? Don't worry, I don't need to see him now. Just let him know I said hello." The receptionist's eyes widened. "Oh, of course. He'll be very pleased." Isabella thanked her and walked out, her heart pounding. She hadn't even seen him, yet she knew word of her visit would travel fast. And it did. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the town in gold and amber, Isabella sat at a small cafe near the square. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, her mind elsewhere, when a shadow fell across her table. She looked up. Ethan Blake. He wasn't in a suit this time. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled, and dark trousers. It made him look less like the powerful businessman and more like the boy she once knew. But the years had carved maturity into his face, and there was something softer in his eyes now, a mixture of hope and regret. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. She gestured gracefully. "Go ahead." He sat, studying her as though he couldn't quite believe she was real. "You came by my office today." "I did," she said lightly. "I thought it would be polite to say hello." He gave a faint, almost self-deprecating smile. "Polite? After everything, you still think of me politely." Her spoon clinked against the cup as she set it down. "People change, Ethan." His gaze lingered on her face, and for a moment the cafe seemed to fade around them. "You have. You're calmer now. Stronger. But you're still the same Isabella the First," he caught himself, swallowing the last words. She tilted her head, her smile steady. "The same Isabella you hurt." His expression darkened. "I regret that every day." For a heartbeat, her chest ached, but she crushed it quickly, replacing the pang with steel. "Regret is easy when you've already won, Ethan." His hands tightened slightly on the table. "I didn't win. I lost everything that mattered the night I lost you." The words hit her like a blow, but she hid it well, lifting her cup with steady hands. "Well, that was a long time ago." They sat in silence for a while, the air between them heavy with old wounds and unspoken truths. Finally, Ethan leaned back. "Maybe we could start over. As friends, at least." She let her eyes soften, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. "Maybe." Inside, though, her heart whispered, "Not as friends. As prey." News traveled quickly in small towns, and Isabella's return was no exception. By the following evening, whispers about her were on every corner. How radiant she looked, how kind she was, how she had forgiven the past. But not everyone was charmed. At the town's upscale restaurant, Olivia Harris sat across from Ethan, her wine glass untouched. She was a striking woman with sleek blonde hair that gleamed under the soft lights and sharp blue eyes that rarely missed anything. She had built her life carefully, her career, her reputation, her relationship with Ethan. And she wasn't about to let a ghost from his past undo it all. "You've been distracted since yesterday," Olivia said, her voice cool. "Let me guess, it's because she's back." Ethan sighed, setting down his fork. "Olivia, please. I don't want to argue." Her eyes narrowed. "So I'm right. You've seen her, haven't you?" He hesitated, which was all the answer she needed. "I knew it," Olivia snapped. "You've been different ever since that woman showed her face again." Ethan rubbed his temples, his voice low. "It's not what you think. Isabella was an important part of my past. I can't just pretend she doesn't exist." "She's not just your past, Ethan. She's a threat. Don't think I can't see it, the way you look when her name is mentioned." Olivia leaned forward, her words sharp as glass. "She's here for a reason, and I doubt it's as innocent as you want to believe." Ethan met her gaze firmly. "Olivia, she's been gone for almost 10 years. If she says she's moved on, I believe her." Olivia's laugh was cold. "You always were blind when it came to her." Later that night, Isabella found herself at a charity event hosted by none other than Blake Enterprises. She glided through the room with elegance, shaking hands, exchanging warm smiles. Her presence lit the air, and people whispered about how gracefully she had returned. Across the room, Olivia watched her like a hawk. When their eyes finally met, Olivia crossed the floor with deliberate steps. "So," Olivia said smoothly, her smile sharp, "you must be Isabella Carter. I've heard so much about you." Isabella returned the smile, her tone pleasant. "All good things, I hope." Olivia's eyes glinted. "Depends on who you ask." The two women stood facing each other, their smiles polite, their eyes locked in silent battle. "Ethan speaks of you fondly," Isabella said, her voice gentle but edged with meaning. "I'm sure he does," Olivia replied, her tone cool. "But you should know something, Isabella. Whatever you had with him, it's over. Ethan belongs to me now." Isabella let out a soft laugh, delicate as crystal. "Oh, I have no claim on Ethan. I only came back to see old friends." Her smile widened, but only slightly. "Though it's touching how worried you sound." Olivia's jaw tightened, though her smile never faltered. "Worried? Hardly. I'm just making it clear where things stand." "Of course," Isabella said smoothly, turning away. "Thank you for the reminder." As she walked off, her heart surged with satisfaction. Olivia was already unsettled. Ethan was already conflicted. The pieces were moving exactly as she had planned. The rain had started in the early hours of the morning, and by noon the sky still hung heavy with low grey clouds. From her room at the guest house, Isabella watched droplets race each other down the windowpane. The steady rhythm was almost soothing, almost enough to quiet the storm inside her chest. Almost. The truth was, the rain only made her restless. It dragged her backward into memories she had tried to bury but could never fully silence. The ones that still tasted of salt and betrayal. She pressed her forehead lightly against the cool glass, closing her eyes. And suddenly, she was 19 again. It had been a summer night, warm and golden, the air filled with laughter and music. The town's annual fair sprawled across the square with twinkling lights and the smell of fried dough. Isabella had been young, hopeful, and in love. She wore a simple white dress that floated around her knees as she laughed at something Ethan whispered in her ear. He had been everything to her then, tall, charming, with a mischievous grin that belonged only to her. He had promised her forever, had sworn no ambition or dream would come between them. But forever had lasted only until temptation knocked on his door. The Blake family had been clawing for power, desperate to secure a partnership with investors from the city. Isabella had been at Ethan's side that night, glowing with pride as he spoke about his dreams. She hadn't known what was coming. The announcement was sudden, Public. Ethan had stood in front of the crowd, his arms stiff around her shoulders, and introduced her not as his love but as a mistake. "She's sweet," he'd said with a tight smile, the words practiced. "But she's young. I need to focus on serious things now. Business. Responsibility. I can't waste time chasing romance." The laughter that followed still rang in Isabella's ears. People had nodded approvingly, believing it showed maturity, ambition. But Isabella had stood frozen, her heart shredding in real time, while Ethan's hand slipped from her shoulder as if she were nothing at all. Later, she had confronted him behind the fairgrounds, her voice breaking. "Why? Why would you do that to me in front of everyone?" He hadn't even looked ashamed. Only cold, determined. "Because I needed them to believe I was ready for bigger things. They wouldn't take me seriously if they thought I was distracted. You were a distraction, Isabella." That night, something inside her had died. A clap of thunder yanked her back to the present. She opened her eyes, staring at her reflection in the rain-smeared glass. She wasn't that girl anymore. She wasn't the trembling child who had begged for answers, who had walked away humiliated. Now she was stronger, sharper, and Ethan Blake was about to pay for every tear he had ever caused her. That evening, she dressed in a fitted black dress and attended a networking event hosted at the Blake Enterprises headquarters. The lobby glittered with chandeliers and polished marble. Isabella floated through the crowd, her smile soft, her voice gentle, her mask flawless. But as she sipped champagne and nodded at compliments, her mind whispered through the rain-soaked memories. "Never forget what he did. Never forget what he cost you. This is not forgiveness. This is war." Across the room, Ethan spotted her. His eyes lit up, filled with something that looked dangerously close to hope. He began weaving his way toward her, but Isabella slipped away into a circle of investors before he could reach her. If Ethan wanted her presence, he would get it, but only when she decided. The first strike came quietly, like the opening note of a song no one realized was beginning. Isabella knew Ethan's empire was built on two things: trust and image. People believed in him. They admired him. They thought him honorable, generous, dependable. If she could chip away at that image, the cracks would spread until the whole structure collapsed. She started with whispers. At a luncheon a week later, she leaned close to one of the town's councilmen, her voice low and confidential. "It's probably nothing, but I heard some of Ethan's contracts haven't been as clean as they appear. Of course, I'm sure it's just gossip." At the bookstore, she let a sigh slip as she spoke to Mrs. Turner, her words coated in concern. "I do hope Ethan hasn't overextended himself. It would be such a shame if the company stumbled after all his hard work." Small words. Small seeds. But in a town like this, seeds grew quickly. Her second move was bolder. She had managed, through a contact in the city, to obtain a set of documents, nothing scandalous, but enough to suggest that Blake Enterprises was facing tighter margins than anyone knew. Late invoices, a delayed shipment, an unsettled debt. She accidentally left one of the papers visible in her bag during another public event, where she knew the sharp-eyed Olivia Harris would notice. And Olivia did. "What's that?" Olivia asked, her eyes narrowing. Isabella looked up innocently, sliding the paper back into her bag. "Oh, nothing. Just something someone showed me. Probably not important." But Olivia was already frowning, suspicion blooming. Meanwhile, Ethan felt the pressure tightening around him. Deals that had once flowed smoothly now snagged on little doubts. A handshake that should have closed quickly lingered with hesitation. A phone call ended with a polite excuse rather than agreement. He couldn't understand it. His numbers were steady, his reputation strong. And yet, something in the air had shifted. One evening, he paced his office, staring out at the town lights. When Isabella appeared at the doorway, he turned, relief flooding his face. "You came," he said softly. "I was nearby," she replied, stepping into the room. He studied her for a long moment, his voice almost breaking. "I don't know what's happening, Isabella. People are pulling away. Deals are stalling. And I can't shake the feeling that somehow, it's all connected to you. Her lips curved in a faint smile, her eyes calm. Me? Ethan, I'm only here to see old friends. He searched her face, as though trying to find the truth hidden beneath her mask. At last, he looked away, sighing. Maybe I'm just imagining things. She walked closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, soft, dangerous, unforgettable. She laid a hand lightly on his desk, her eyes never leaving his. Maybe you are, she whispered. And in that moment, Ethan didn't realize the game had already begun. The sun was setting in strokes of orange and crimson, casting the town in a glow that made even broken roads look beautiful. Ethan stood outside the guest house, his hands shoved into his pockets, his jaw tight with a mixture of frustration and longing. He had been circling the same thought all day. Isabella's return wasn't an accident. It wasn't simply nostalgia that had brought her back. She carried herself with too much purpose, too much calculation in her gaze. And yet, when he looked at her, all he could see was the girl he had once held, the girl who had once looked at him as though he was her whole world. He rang the bell, his heart pounding. When the door opened, Isabella appeared in the frame, her dark hair loose over her shoulders, her eyes wary but unreadable. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" she asked softly. He swallowed. "I needed to see you." She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. Inside, the room smelled faintly of lavender and rain-damp fabric. She crossed her arms and leaned against the table, her gaze steady on him. "You should stop this," she said, her tone even. "You and I, we're history." "History," he echoed, his voice bitter. "Is that all I am to you?" She didn't answer. He moved closer, his voice lowering. "Isabella, I know I hurt you. I know I made choices that destroyed what we had. But I was young, desperate to prove myself. I thought I was doing the right thing." Her laugh was short, sharp. "The right thing? Do you remember what you said to me that night at the fair? Do you remember how small you made me feel in front of the entire town?" His shoulders slumped. "I remember every word. And I regret them every single day." "Regret doesn't erase scars," she whispered. He stepped closer, his eyes burning with sincerity. "Then let me try to heal them." For a fleeting moment, her heart faltered. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the warmth that had once been hers. But the echo of betrayal still throbbed too loudly in her chest. She forced her voice steady. "You can't fix what you broke, Ethan. And you don't even realize that maybe some wounds were never meant to heal." He studied her, his expression pained, as though he could sense the walls she was holding up. At last, he nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then I'll prove it," he said firmly. "I'll prove to you that I'm not the same man anymore." Before she could reply, he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Isabella exhaled shakily, her knees weak. She pressed her palm against the table, steadying herself. "Prove it," she thought. "Ethan, you don't understand. I didn't come back to be proven wrong. I came back to burn everything you built." And yet, even as she reminded herself of her mission, a dangerous warmth lingered in her chest where his words had settled. The next day, the whispers in town grew louder. Isabella's carefully planted seeds had begun to sprout into vines of doubt. At the cafe, she overheard two businessmen speaking in hushed voices. "They say Ethan's company isn't as solid as it looks." "Wouldn't surprise me. He's been growing too fast. Always a risk." She stirred her tea calmly, but inside, a flicker of satisfaction warmed her. Her plan was unfolding perfectly, until Olivia Harris slid into the chair across from her. "You've been busy," Olivia said, her smile polite but her eyes sharp. "Have I?" Isabella asked, tilting her head. Olivia leaned in. "I know you didn't come back for nostalgia, Isabella. I know you're stirring things. People may not see it yet, but I do. And Ethan, he doesn't deserve whatever game you're playing." Isabella's fingers tightened around her cup. Deserve, she repeated softly. Olivia, you don't know half the story. Then tell me, Olivia challenged. But Isabella only smiled, a smile that revealed nothing. Some truths are better left buried. Olivia studied her, her suspicion deepening. You can't hide behind mystery forever. Sooner or later, people will see you for what you're doing. And with that, she rose and walked away, her heels clicking like a warning bell. Isabella's mask didn't falter until Olivia was gone. Then she set her cup down with trembling fingers. For the first time since her return, she wondered if she had underestimated her opponent. That night, she dreamed of Ethan again, not the man she wanted to destroy, but the boy who had once held her hand under the stars. She woke with her pillow damp from tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. She sat up in the darkness, whispering into the silence. Don't be weak, Isabella. Not now. But her heart, traitorous as ever, refused to harden completely. The days that followed were a battle between her heart and her plan. Ethan kept appearing, uninvited but persistent. He showed up at the bookstore where she lingered over novels. He found her at the farmer's market, offering her fresh apples with a boyish smile. He even left flowers outside the guest house, lilies, the ones she used to love. Each time, Isabella reminded herself, this is strategy. This is manipulation. Don't let him in. But each time, the walls inside her shook just a little more. One afternoon, she found herself sitting with him at the edge of the park, the air cool and fragrant with cut grass. She hadn't meant to, he had simply walked beside her, talking softly until she couldn't quite bring herself to walk away. He was telling her about his father, about the pressure to carry the family name, about the fear of failing in front of everyone. I thought success would make me free, he admitted quietly. But the higher I climbed, the more chains I felt. And somewhere along the way, I realized I'd lost the one person who ever made me feel like myself. His gaze drifted to her, tender and raw. I lost you. Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, to tell him it was too late. But the honesty in his eyes made the words stick in her chest. She turned away, focusing on the children playing in the distance. You can't rewrite the past, Ethan. No, he agreed. But maybe I can rewrite the future. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of children's laughter and the rustle of wind in the trees. And in that silence, Isabella realized she was slipping. That evening, Olivia confronted Ethan. Can't you see what she's doing? Olivia demanded, her voice sharp with frustration. She's manipulating you. She's here to hurt you, Ethan. Everything about her return screams revenge. Ethan frowned. You don't know her like I do. I know enough, Olivia snapped. And if you don't open your eyes, she's going to ruin you. But Ethan only shook his head. I'd rather take the risk than push her away again. Olivia's hands curled into fists. Then don't say I didn't warn you. Meanwhile, Isabella sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. She had played her role perfectly, spreading doubt, planting rumors, weaving a quiet web. And yet, her reflection betrayed her. Her eyes weren't those of a woman at peace with vengeance. They were the eyes of someone torn in half. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling. What are you doing, Isabella? This wasn't supposed to hurt you. The mask she had so carefully worn was beginning to crack. And somewhere deep inside, she feared that when it shattered completely, the only one left bleeding would be her. The storm broke on a Thursday night. The town was restless with whispers, but inside the banquet hall, golden chandeliers sparkled overhead, and laughter echoed as polished shoes clicked across marble floors. Ethan had organized a charity gala, a night meant to symbolize his dedication to rebuilding the town and giving back. To the crowd, he was still the shining figure of success. To Isabella, he was a man standing in the center of a crumbling empire. She entered the hall in a gown of midnight silk, her presence turning heads instantly. Conversations stuttered. Eyes followed her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. She smiled politely at them all, her heart steady, her plan sharp as a blade. This was the night she would strike. For weeks, she had been planting seeds, feeding doubts into eager ears, guiding gossip into dangerous channels. Tonight, all of it would bloom. Ethan's carefully constructed image would unravel before his very eyes. But as her gaze landed on him, tall, handsome, radiant in his tailored suit, her resolve wavered. He looked at her as if she were the only person in the room, his eyes full of something achingly familiar. Not arrogance, not indifference. Love. She looked away before the weight of it could pierce her armor. Later, as the night wore on, Olivia moved through the crowd like a predator. She had been watching Isabella, studying her every move, waiting for the moment to expose her. Her suspicions had hardened into certainty. Isabella hadn't returned for forgiveness. She had returned for blood. And Olivia wouldn't let Ethan be destroyed without a fight. She waited until Ethan pulled Isabella onto the balcony, the city lights glittering beneath them. From the shadows of the hall, Olivia's jaw tightened. This was her chance. On the balcony, the night air was cool, the sky painted in streaks of silver moonlight. Ethan's voice was soft, earnest. "You look like a dream tonight," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. She kept her tone steady. "Dreams fade. But some are worth holding on to," he murmured. He reached for her hand, and though she wanted to pull away, she found herself frozen, her heart betraying her. "Isabella," he whispered, "I meant what I said. I want to rebuild what we lost. I'll give up everything if I have to, the company, the success, all of it. None of it matters if I don't have you." Her lips parted, but no words came. For a brief, dizzying moment, the years of anger dissolved, and all she saw was the boy who once swore the world to her under the stars. But then, like a cruel reminder, Olivia's voice cut through the night. "She doesn't want your love, Ethan. She wants your ruin." Isabella turned sharply, her face paling as Olivia stepped onto the balcony, her eyes blazing with truth. "She's been spreading lies about you," Olivia continued, her voice loud enough to draw curious glances from inside. "Every rumor, every shadow over your name these past weeks, it's her. Isabella came back for revenge, and you've been too blinded to see it." Ethan's face drained of color. He looked at Olivia, then back at Isabella, disbelief warring with dread. "Tell me she's lying," he whispered. Isabella's throat tightened. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment to watch his world crumble. And yet, as his eyes pleaded with hers, the words wouldn't come. Olivia's gaze cut like steel. "Say it, Isabella. Tell him why you're really here." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Inside the hall, the music faltered as guests craned to watch the unfolding scene. Finally, Isabella forced herself to speak. Her voice trembled, but the truth spilled out, sharp as glass. "Yes. I came back to destroy you." The words hung in the air, cold and merciless. Ethan staggered back, as though struck. His hand dropped from hers, his eyes wide with a pain so raw it twisted her chest. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why would you, after everything?" Her composure broke, and tears burned at the edges of her eyes. "Because you broke me, Ethan. You humiliated me, abandoned me when I needed you most. You left me with nothing but scars. And I swore I'd make you feel the same emptiness." The crowd inside erupted into shocked whispers, faces pressed against the glass doors. Ethan's shoulders shook, his voice rough. "You think I didn't suffer? You think I didn't regret every day since that night? I was a coward, yes. But I never stopped loving you, Isabella. Never." Her heart clenched violently, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. Love doesn't erase betrayal. For a long moment, the night was silent except for the distant hum of the city. Then Ethan stepped back, his face pale, his voice hollow. "Then congratulations," he said softly. "You've succeeded. You've destroyed me." And with that, he turned and walked back into the hall, leaving her trembling on the balcony, the crowd's whispers echoing like knives around her. That night, Isabella lay awake in her room, her mask shattered, her chest aching. She had won. She had destroyed Ethan's trust, his pride, his love. So why did victory feel like the sharpest defeat of all? The town buzzed in the days that followed. Ethan's name, once spoken with admiration, was now tangled in suspicion and pity. Investors pulled back, partners hesitated, and whispers thickened like smoke. Isabella's plan had worked. And yet, instead of triumph, she felt only the weight of hollow silence. At the guesthouse window, she watched rain streak down the glass, her reflection pale and tired. She thought of Ethan's face on the balcony, not the man she wanted to ruin, but the boy she had once loved with every part of her soul. The boy who had looked at her as though she was home. Her heart whispered treason against her revenge. You still love him. But it was too late. Ethan withdrew from the world. He stopped appearing at town meetings, stopped walking the streets with his easy smile. He stayed behind closed doors, the glow of his success dimmed to nothing. One evening, Olivia found him in his office, papers scattered, whiskey half drained. You can't let her destroy you completely, she urged, her voice fierce. But he only shook his head, his eyes hollow. She already has. Olivia clenched her fists. Then fight back. Expose her. Don't let her get away with this. He looked at her, weary and broken. And what will that give me? Revenge? I don't want revenge. I just wanted her. Olivia's anger faltered, replaced by pity. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, retreating further into the shadows of his own despair. Meanwhile, Isabella couldn't escape the weight of her choices. The town eyed her with suspicion now, whispers following her steps. The mask of elegance and power was cracking. One night, she wandered to the river where she and Ethan had once shared their first kiss. The moon reflected in the water, trembling with ripples. She whispered into the night, as if he could hear her. I thought hurting you would heal me, but all I've done is wound myself deeper. Tears slipped down her cheeks, disappearing into the dark water. The end came quietly. A week later, news spread through the town like wildfire. Ethan had been found lifeless in his study, the bottle of whiskey empty beside him, a note folded neatly on the desk. The words were simple, almost unbearably so. I loved you, Isabella. Even when you hated me. Even when you destroyed me. I still loved you. When Isabella read the note, her knees buckled, the paper trembling in her hands. A sound tore from her throat, half sob, half scream. She had wanted revenge. She had wanted him to feel her pain. And now, staring at the finality of his words, she realized she had destroyed not just him, but the last fragile piece of herself that still believed in love. The town buried Ethan under a sky heavy with rain. Isabella stood at a distance, her black veil hiding her tear-streaked face. She wanted to run, to scream, to undo everything. But the past lay like stone between them, immovable and merciless. As the last handful of dirt fell over his grave, she whispered through the storm, words swallowed by the wind. I never stopped loving you either. But it was too late. Her revenge had been complete. And so was her ruin. When love becomes revenge, every secret burns, every choice cuts deeper, and every ending leaves scars. If this story kept you on edge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More stories of love, betrayal, and devastating twists are waiting, and the next one might just break your heart all over again.